What's up, kitty? What's up, kitty?
Hi, everybody. What's going on, everybody?
Who is that cat? Arter. You're just gonna stare at me? Oh.
I am Walrus. What the hell? Cringe.
Hey, peace and love, Islam. No, just kidding. What's up, guys? How you doing? It's Arty's Corporate Fiction, and tonight we have a awesome show. It's lawyer discussing sovereign citizens with other lawyers, and tonight, we got Joseph Pometto, who's an attorney over in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. He's got his own channel, so definitely check out his channel. I have a link in the description and for you to look at. I was referenced by Van Balian, who pointed me out to one of his videos. And today we're just going to talk about, sovereign citizens in general, like, how we discovered them and, how we as attorneys, how our perspectives are when it comes to this movement. So, Joe, why don't you introduce yourself and we can get started.
Hi, I'm Joe Pometto. I'm a criminal defense attorney out of Pittsburgh. I do have my own show, the Joe Pometto Law Show. Take a second and check that out. I'm very grateful that Artrexis invited me onto his show to discuss this topic. We do have that mutual connection through Van Bayon. I want to pronounce that L. But I'm happy to be here. We're going to, like Artrexis said, we're going to talk about, our perspective as attorneys. We learn the law, we study the law, and we see these sovereign citizens talking about the law in sort of their own fictional way. So we have some opinions on that, as you may believe.
So, as we talked about it off stream. You said that you were kind of new to this whole thing, and I think one of the things that I was curious about is, how did you find out about this movement, and can you give us an example of what you've experienced firsthand as far as sovereign citizens go?
Sure. So I graduated law school in 2013, and like I said, I'm a criminal defense attorney. I work for the public defender's office, and I also work for the Office of Conflict Counsel, which is like the public defender's office. So we represent people who fall below a certain income line, can't afford defense attorneys. So I was at court. I was a law student, and there were these guys. I've only seen a handful of them in my time, but there were these guys called sovereign citizens who were rejecting our representation of them. They're like, we don't want public defenders. We don't want public defenders. And I'm new, and I'm like, what's going on here? And I ask a senior attorney, and he's like, oh, these guys, they don't believe the law applies to them, blah, blah, blah. So I seen a couple of them go before judges, and most of the stuff I saw was kind of entertaining from the perspective that they were there on minor offenses. Some of them may have been in jail and some of them weren't. and they would get into their sovereign citizen shtick, and then the district attorney and the judge would be like, look, we're offering you, a plea to a lesser offense. You'll be hit with a fine. You can go home today. And most of the time, boom, they would just take it. So they changed their tune as soon as a good plea offer was made to them that was going to get them out of jail. So I saw that.
It's funny you say it's when I laugh when you mention that to me, because it's like you don't see that in the videos in the courtroom audio. You always see them, making their defiant stands against the government, but you never see them end up taking the plea deal when it suits them, huh?
I've seen it. I've seen it with my own eyes, but absolutely, I don't know if that makes for good video. Maybe we need to find some of those.
And to give you mine, and I don't know if I've told my audience this, I haven't seen it firsthand, at least as in person in a courtroom. Where I've got my first taste of sovereign citizens is usually with my work with filings. I work for an agency, and what I get is our complaints from the general public. When I first started my job, one of my very first cases was somebody who had all the hallmarks of a sovereign citizen: Republic of New Jersey. I'm a free inhabited living man on the land, etc., etc., etc. And I was like, what the hell is this crap? And so, as most of my audience could probably attest to, I mean, they wouldn't be here watching if they didn't enjoy it. I went into there goes your sign. I went down the YouTube rabbit hole and started watching all these compilations. Like, what the hell is going on with these people? And and then the moment I decided, okay, let's look at Lexis. It's as you and I know, it's a repository of legal opinions, and wow, the moment you put in sovereign citizen in there, you get a lot of hits back about people who have used these strategies. And based on my research, I think the earliest moment I've seen them try to use this was like 1980. Before that, it was because based on my research, they melted or evolved from the old tax protester movement. The 16th Amendment doesn't apply, or it's improper. I feel like a lot of sovereign citizens, they evolved their ideology from the old tax protester movement, which is even older than that. So, the first time I ever saw a case where this person says, like, the laws, not just the tax laws, but all laws do not apply to me, was like around the early 1980s.
Interesting.
Again, this is a movement, or this is a legal strategy that's been around for 40 years, and people still use it to this day for whatever reason, thinking that it's going to work.
It's a failing legal strategy. But yeah, I'll tell the story on my show. So like I said, I had seen these guys in action, and I started my show to promote my law firm and my law practice, and just to make fun interesting videos, inform people of the law. And I made a show on, I had some feedback from comments asking about sovereign citizens, and I made a video on sovereign citizens, and I entitled it, Sovereign Citizen, Why It Doesn't Work. Mm-hmm. And I think that someone posted it, and I can see from my YouTube analytics, someone posted it in a Reddit thread. Mm-hmm. And it went like baby viral. Like, most of my videos were getting hits by like 30, 40, 50 hits. Okay. People I know, I'm posted on Facebook. All of a sudden I got like 1,000 hits on this video, and I'm like, what is going on here? And that's when I started to dive, and I haven't gone as deep into the rabbit hole as you have. But that's when I dove in. It's funny you say that about the legal opinion, and it's funny that that a lot of these sovereigns, they don't recognize the government. I've seen one in a YouTube video citing a Supreme Court case, and I'm because they've written about them in the Supreme Court, apparently. I'm like, well, you can't cite this court that's illegitimate to you when making this argument.
Yeah, it's a testament to contradictions, when this Supreme Court case says that the laws don't apply to me, but why are you but by virtue of citing it, you're invariably recognize it in the first place. So
exactly, for sure.
And there is actually one video I recently watched where the judge directly calls the individual out on that. Sir, by trying to submit this to the court, submit this as evidence, you are invariably, acknowledging my existence and jurisdiction. Or in the other, and again, in a separate context, okay, you have this document from the Secretary of State for New Mexico saying that you're the executor of this legal fiction. By virtue of you using this as a form of legitimacy, you are accepting the legitimacy of the Secretary of State for the state of New Mexico. It's just, it's always one of those hilarious yet frustrating aspects of the movement that I always get a kick out of it. I think for me, that's why it's addicting to see some of this stuff.
Absolutely. It's a walking contradiction. And one of the things, and we talked a little bit about this before, Artrix, is it's as attorneys, and we're we go to law school and we learn to make these legal arguments, and then once you get into the practice, you use maybe some of the arguments you've known. And it's always just sort of interesting to hear, something new. And you hear these people, and the funny thing is there's like a little bit of logic to it, but at the end of the day, when you get to the bottom of it, you got like a major premise, a minor premise, and the syllogism. Well, there's no major premise ultimately with the sovereign citizens, but yeah, in a way, it's appealing to an attorney's mind, but it's also ridiculous, sort of, when you dig down into it.
Well, that's the thing. Like, I try. It can't be helped, and I think this is something that I talked about. Is like you can get so very easily caught into the weeds, in a sense of a lot of what I try to focus is like, a lot of them try to read cases, read court cases out of context. They cherry pick a lot. They misinterpret statutory language, but what you can get caught into the weeds of is into the deep philosophical and ideological aspect of what they do and how they operate. And I think in your video you kind of tapped into that, into natural law, and and one of the people in my chat, Luke, mentioned is like the whole concept of the consent of the governed, where oftentimes they take that in a very literal sense. Like, yes, consent of the governed means I have to literally, as an individual, consent to each and every single law that's been passed in order for it to apply to me. Okay, that's not
right.
How do you operate a society if it acts if you do something like that? And that's where you get into that sort of like ideological bent of society and how society operates, and how we deal with aspects of law and order and enforcement, and who has the power to enforce certain acts. And then you get into the idea of like, okay, we have a system of government in place, and once you go down that road, it gets way too deep into the weeds, when at the end of the day, this jackass is trying to get out of a traffic ticket. Right.
It's crazy. Yeah, I actually thought about going into, and I don't know what was your undergrad?
I did political science undergrad in Texas.
That's why we're interested in this. That's why I was a political science undergrad too, and it's so we read political philosophy, etc., and
Montesquieu, de Tocqueville,
right. Right, exactly. Some attorneys don't have that background. They might
Right.
pick a little bit up in law school, but it's
Yeah.
the consent of the governed, the social contract,
which they also take literally.
right? They take extremely literally, and it's really, you can get into the weeds with it. But it's also maybe a fun way to bring up those topics. You can talk about democracy, the history of democracy, the roots of democracy, the Federalist Papers.
Mm-hmm.
They like to, some of them believe in the Constitution, some of them don't. I wish they'd do a little more reading on the theories behind the Constitution and, the whole purpose of having a republic and representative government. And the concept of the social contract that the government is through a democracy, in a sense, has the consent of the governed. And that's what kind of frustrates me also, watching some of their arguments. Like I did a video on this guy who was caught with a little bit of marijuana and charged with marijuana possession and resisting arrest. And he's the marijuana, this is my property, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, it's your property, it's illegal property. If you have a problem with the marijuana laws, okay, go out there and get the laws changed. Vote for legislators who will change that law. Peacefully protest. There's 100 things you can do to try to get the laws changed, and the laws do get changed. But these guys, they don't want to do any of that. They just they want to use it to get out, like you said, get out of a crime or something.
Right. No, and that's one aspect that people tend to do. And again, it is something that I've often said more than one occasion, is that my whole bent is not necessarily that I'm defending the efficacy of these laws. That's not what I'm here for. Most of the time, I'll agree with them that some of these laws are asinine, and I ideologically, I probably disagree with them. The whole point is that the state, through our precedent, through our evolution of our laws, they, for better or worse, they have the authority to pass these laws, and through our system of government, that means even if I disagree with them, I can be punished if I don't follow them. It's the what we have agreed to be the best form of government compared to all the rest, and just simply saying I can ignore them because I don't agree with them doesn't really fly, because then anybody could make that argument.
Right. And then in a sense, they're anarchists. In a sense, they're just anarchists. But I watch them, like their argument would make a lot more sense if you were protesting a king. And like you said, it makes sense. And I didn't know that the movement grew out of tax protesters, but that makes complete sense to me. I mean, if you're objecting to a dictatorship or a monarchy, you got a little bit more ground to stand on. But you want consent. Democracy is about as consensual as a government's going to get.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, that's going into the weeds of it, and especially with the case that you were referring to, because that's the part of that Free Keene movement, because they're like very anarcho-libertarians, like very hardcore anarchist type of situation. Which again, the thing is, like the whole point was that a lot of them moved to that small town, ended up giving that town a whole bunch of hell, because they'd done a whole lot of that crap. If you've seen any of their other videos, where apparently it's, instead of running for council and modifying their parking ordinances and the laws that way, they just decide, I'm just going to do my own thing, and then try to make a claim in court thinking that it's going to work. The judge, I remember the judge in that case that you were referring to, the judge says, look, man, the legislature in its good wisdom decided to make this substance, unlawful to possess. And I, as a judge, I am obligated to adhere to the laws that have been passed by the legislature, which they in turn are, voted in to office by the general populace. You don't like it, work to either elect yourself there or vote for somebody who agrees with your ideology. And in fact, in New Hampshire, there is actually, I think he's the only sovereign citizen I know of who is actually a member of the New Hampshire legislature. I don't know if you've seen him yet, but it's amazing to see that in practice.
He was the subject of one of the videos that I did.
Okay.
Video. I didn't I clicked on that was from Free Keene. I did the video. I looked on Free Keene. I clicked on that video and I saw him, and I was like, this guy won. He won the election. Someone actually posted in my comments, I guess their electoral system for state representatives it's based on percentages in certain districts. And he said that this guy got, the whole district goes Republican and they put in like 4 Republicans. Mm-hmm. And so he would just be the last one. And so basically he's winning like an unopposed sort of election. Mm-hmm. But I didn't know that about Free Keene, that they're forming this little anarcho sovereign citizen.
Yeah, they've been giving this particular town a whole bunch of hell. And I actually kind of feel bad for him. But that's neither here nor there. Sure. So one specific aspect, and a lot that my audience has been well aware of, is the Moorish sect of this whole movement. And for me, as I consider them kind of the most unhinged of the group, because it's not just the whole ideological nonsense, is they have a complete revisionist history of how the world operates. Like, yeah, it's kind of like, man, I've been trying to figure out how they operate for a long time, and even I don't know if I can get it fully straight. But they have this entire revisionist idea that the Moorish people, which they consider black, mm-hmm. It's instead of race, they identify you're either Moorish or Asiatic, which means that you're a individual of color who hasn't identified as a Moor, or you're an Albion, or so-called European or white. And that's a whole nother thing, because there are elements of black nationalism mixed in with this. Okay. They believe that their nationality had a pan-global empire at some point. They don't really tell you when this happened or when it fell, but at some point it existed. So any Native American tribe, any and all African ethnicities, and all of them, they were all actually Moors. They basically co-opt a whole bunch of different ethnicities as Moors. And so that's why they actually have different names for regions in the United States.
So they have their own map?
I actually saw a makeshift map, and it was kind of fucking nuts. They called North America a Mexim or something like that.
Okay.
All right. The long story short is that they believe that they were here first, and by here I mean the North American continent. In other words, the colonists, they allowed them to settle here. They allowed them to form their own colonies here, and they allowed the United States to secede and to form their own system of government through their permission. And so therefore they say that because of that, they still have higher political standing than all of the Europeans that are here today, thereby justifying the reason why they don't have to follow the laws. And through there, then they go through the usual sovereign citizen ideology of the UCC statements and so on and so forth. But their underlying reason why they don't think the laws apply to them is this insane revisionist history thing that they have going. Man, that's why I'm saying that they are the most batshit crazy out of all of the sovereign citizen ideologies, because of their whole underlying reason for why they say what they say.
It seems like the other ones just have like one or two hinge points in history that they change.
There's a little bit of conspiracy, yeah.
Yeah, to fit their narrative. But what you're telling me about the Moors is it's like a whole global transformational type art, like fictional history.
They often, mix, Egyptian, Arabic, and African, and even Jewish, like iconography and religious aspects, and they just throw it into a pot and stir it, and then they create this entire ideology. It's nuts. It's fucking nuts. And one of the bigger, most, and to go what we were talking about as far as like, in sovereign citizens, one of the biggest players in the Moorish aspect is an individual named Taj Tarik Bey. And he's one of the most infamous of the group, and he has a base in like Philadelphia. Pretty sure he lives in the Philadelphia area. But the thing is that he's also one of the gurus. In other words, I believe he has a website, RV Bay Productions, and that's where he sells a lot of the crap. He sells the packets on announcing your status, your ID cards. So so if you find him on YouTube, he's like he's considered a de facto leader of this kind of sect. And gotcha. Then you have somebody who I discussed or discovered a week or 2 weeks ago, Sharon Gale Bay, who, oh man, so I dissected one of her videos, and in it, on top of the psychotic revisionist history, you also deal with somebody who clearly plays into the black nationalist sect, to the point where she's full on racism. She considered them the Moors are the racially and politically superior group in the United States, and then anybody who's not Moor, aka Albion, have to register as an immigrant or will be kicked out of the country. Again, she's fucking nuts. But
let me ask you something, Nortrix. Is there overlap? Is there overlap between the Black Israelites and the sovereign citizens and the Moors?
There is a bit.
And I say this before you answer because I used to visit my friend in Philadelphia. And, Pittsburgh's a big city, but Philly's bigger. Philly's a lot bigger, okay? And I was downtown, and I saw just a massive – I wasn't sure what it was at the time. I think it was like the Black Israelites. They were just set up. Like, they had these tables, and they had, like, speaker phones and all of these, like, pictures hanging, and they're handing out pamphlets. I'm like, what's going on? So I just wondered if there was some overlap there because you said it's Philadelphia.
There is. I wouldn't say all Moors go full on with the Black Hebrew Israelites, but I've seen, at least with Sharon, this Sharon Gale Bay, she does. There is a lot of overlap. Because from what I understand, the Black Hebrew Israelites are hardcore, like racism and nationalism type aspects of it. But there is a mix there. But oftentimes, like, they use coded language, like, if whenever in courtrooms, whenever they say, they demand the judge to say, hey, what's your nationality, they're effectively saying identify your race, because they say the only people who can judge them are other Moors, in other words, other black black people. So so that is one aspect, but yes, there is a little bit of an overlap between those two groups.
Why don't, when we discussed on the phone, you said, I think my viewers would be really interested in this. You broke down the sovereign citizenship movement into sort of, you said there were three sort of groups. And why don't you explain that for the viewers? I found that interesting.
Well, I personally, in my research and following of this moment, I've kind of like identified three distinct groups, and the thing is sometimes each individual can overlap two or even all three of them at the same time, and that would be you have the marks, the con artists, and the true believers. The true believers are exactly what they say they are. They are the ones who wholeheartedly believe exactly what they're advocating. They believe exactly what they're saying about the laws do not apply to them, and you see that when they go in court case after court case after court case. No matter how many times they lose, they double down, triple down, fully believing the nonsense that they're saying. And then you have the gurus. You have the gurus who, through one aspect or another, you can kind of tell that they don't actually buy into this. However, they still sell the packets of just file these paperwork that I created, and you'll get out of your mortgage, or you'll get out of your traffic ticket. Basically, they're in it for the buck. They're just trying to make a buck scamming people while selling these packets to individuals. And then you finally have the marks. You have the people who you could tell that they don't believe in what they're saying, or they might believe a little bit what they're saying, but it's kind of obvious that they bought a packet online, or they're basically going off of what somebody else told them because that person told them that, hey, if you try this strategy, you'll be able to get out of your situation. And that in that respect, in those groups, I have at least a little bit of sympathy for, because sometimes many marks are people who are in desperate situations. There are people who are indeed facing either serious jail time, or who are about to lose their home, or who have inadvertently built up a lot of tech debt, or who are in the middle of a really, really bad custody battle, because a lot of aspects I do see in family court too.
Yeah.
And a lot of the marks, or a lot of the gurus take advantage of that. So you have those three groups, and every once in a while you could see whether somebody is one or a mixture of all three at the same time. So that's how I've evolved, and how I've seen it. I've been able to kind of group these group the movement into together in that respect.
And let me ask you, because there's there's sort of like I don't know how to say this. There's sort of larger groups, and then sort of groups within groups. It's all loosely associated.
Mm-hmm.
Have you seen, would you say that these threads exist, the true believers, gurus, and the marks, throughout all of the groups? So like you see them in, the Moorish sovereign citizens, but you also see them in, the 1781 sovereign citizen. Like, is that present across the board?
I would say, if what you're asking is whether there's actual collaboration between the two, I don't see that a lot. Especially in the Moorish ideology, I see that they're very, very insular. Versus sometimes in the other groups, between the very hyper religious and the non-religious but conspiratorial, a lot of them do overlap. Most of the time, I don't see a lot of collaboration between gurus, or even true, in that respect. Sometimes I'll see some collaboration, and even some competition between gurus. Like, no, my legal bullshit is better than your legal bullshit. And I've seen a few of those too, and I've seen a few of those as well. So I've seen a little bit of that, but not a whole. But as you said, it's a loose affiliation. They'll talk to each other. They'll swap ideas on forums, but I wouldn't say that there's an actual like group, like a centralized group. But I do see it's going international.
I wonder, it's going international?
Oh yeah. It's not going. It has been international.
And
yeah.
I've read that there's some in England and Canada. I mean,
they're their entire they're called free men on the land is their title. They don't associate with sovereign citizens, but they're free men. They're called free men on the land, and that's a lot of them are all the Commonwealth countries. So Canada, England, Ireland, Australia, New Zealand. And this is actually something recent. A couple of months ago, I found out that Germany has their own. Yeah.
I would imagine most countries have some play on it, you know? I mean, it does seem to be out of the Anglo-Saxon American.
But it's common law. They come out of the common law type of thing, but Germany, as far as I know, it's like operate under the civil law. But no, they're called Reichsbürgers. And the thing is that, you know, and that's one of those fascinating things is that, you know, you could tell that they got their roots from sovereign citizens because they replace American documents that they cite with like German documents. So you know, instead of I don't know, I can't remember, instead of like the Articles of Confederation, they talk about the Weimar Republic.
I get it.
That's sort of insanity type of thing. They just swap out. So in England, you know, instead of the Constitution, it's the Magna Carta or the English Bill of Rights. You know, so that's something you've noticed.
Right, like you could just go back to like the last revolution in France and say the newest government is illegitimate for A, B, C, D.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, interesting. What would you say are, so you identified the Moorish, do you think there's a way to identify the other sovereign citizens, break them into larger groups just for you know, understanding purposes?
I mean, the other group, I feel like the Moorish are the most distinctive. That's why they're easy to notice, because again, the moment they talk about their revisionist history, you can easily identify, you know, where they're coming from. The other groups out there, most of the time, it's really they're kind of the same. However, you could tell one is more religious than the other. So, because the other groups will still kind of use the same aspects. They'll still cite to, you know, the Articles of Confederation or the 1933 bankruptcy, or, you know, when we got off the gold standard. You'll see a lot of similarities in that respect, in you know, what they cite to as the reason why this current government is illegitimate.
Right.
But one will say, like, you know, they'll go from a very, very, very religious angle in justifying, you know, why they don't follow the laws. Like, I only follow God's law. You know, they'll heavily cite the Bible and biblical canon to justify their basis for not following secular institutions. Whereas others, they don't necessarily do that. They just focus purely on the conspiratorial stuff about the bankruptcy of 1933, or the very ideological aspect where, you know, the only form of government they accept is the Constitution, bar none. Not even the Bill of Rights. Just whatever the hell was passed without amendments, that's all they follow, or the Articles of Confederation for some insane reason.
Do you think that is there. So that to me looks like it's again just a way to conceptualize. You have the sovereign citizen overall. You got the Moorish group, maybe the more secular group, and then the more religious group. And it sounds like the religious and the secular ones. I mean, we're talking about white people generally, correct?
Yeah, I mean, there are very few instances where I've seen Hispanic individuals try this BS.
Okay.
Or other ethnicities. I've only seen one, and again, I'm only basing it off of her surname. One Asian woman in Pennsylvania who tried this stuff. But the vast majority of people who try this stuff out are the Black Moorish group, or white white individuals. It's very rarely do I see other distinct ethnicities attempt these ideas.
Do you think there's is it regional when it comes to the religious and the secular ones? Like, you think the religious ones are more focused in the more religious parts of the country?
I would agree with that. I would say you're more likely to see the religious ones in the central U.S., the Great Plains area, versus the West Coast or the East Coast.
Yeah, the East Coast ones that I've seen, I haven't really seen a lot of that language. They just stick to, again, subverting the Constitution or somehow subverting laws that were passed after the Constitution, et cetera, et cetera. I did read, I don't know if you saw, I was reading on Wikipedia, and that even, in the white groups too, there's been a bit of a racist history as far as the Equal Protection Clause, et cetera, et cetera. And that stuff's goofy. And you just wonder how groups mix. You sovereign citizens who mix with other, undesirable type groups, and the whole thing is just messy.
Well, that's something that you don't really see discussed a lot, but it is something that I have noticed, is that a lot of them do have their roots in that. And again, I think a lot of it did begin in the late 60s. A lot of tax protester events deal with the late 60s, and a lot of those tax protesters cite not just the problems with the income tax amendment, but the 14th Amendment. And
right.
When you read into it, a lot of it goes back into white supremacist ideologies, where they're still pissed off 100 years later, that the Civil War happened, and again, a lot of them will cite oftentimes 1865, what Lincoln did or didn't do, or the 1871 Act. So a lot of them do go deep into that situation. However, I would argue that most sovereign citizens, both white and black, don't have that sort of right supremacist bent. I would say that most of them aren't, with exceptions. Obviously, most of them aren't racist. They just buy into the whole legal strategy that doesn't work.
Right. Even some of what I read, which was interesting, was that the Moorish movement, borrowed from the white movement, this and that, and in more modern times, it's become detached from a lot of the old racist roots, which are pretty gross. But I think maybe we can get into this aspect here is, you have individuals who, you brought it up in family law, right? Just people who are desperate and they don't have the money to hire an attorney, or they're just getting their clocks cleaned, losing their kids, losing their family. And then you're going to see a lot of individuals who are in jail facing prison. They may have a life sentence. They may have close to life sentences, facing just massive amounts of prison time. These people, maybe, it's sovereign citizenship, or these ideas are like a Hail Mary, a last anchor, something to give them hope, something to give them a little bit of dignity, when it's true, the state is essentially taking away their life.
No, I agree with that. I agree in a lot of aspect of what I've seen in my experience is that a lot of them do prey, and a lot of the gurus prey on people's desperation, and it does deal with people. It's not just somebody who just wants to get out of a traffic ticket. A lot of times, it is people who are at the verge of losing their house, who are at the verge of losing their kids. And who believe that they have been screwed by the system, and they believe that they've been screwed by their own attorneys, and so they're trying to find another route, another option. So in that respect, I've seen that happen on more than one occasion.
I bet. I was talking to a district attorney who actually saw one of my videos, and you know, he's done whole trials against them. I may try to go watch one in downtown Pittsburgh. And you know, one of their strategies is they just file paperwork, is to just paper. He was like, they try to paper you to death, like
Yeah.
boom, 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 and it's like, you know, play the rules, play the procedural card, etc., etc. But yeah, it's kind of sad to see those people. And again, I'm new to this, learning about this community. The whole mark and financial sort of scam aspect to it, I really had no idea about. I did not know about that.
Oh yeah,
until you and I.
Yeah, I mean, there are people. You know, the biggest things is it's not just simply focused on legal documents to file in court, you know, to get them out of whatever situation they're in. A lot of them is like what's called A for V, accepted for value, where, you know, if you take your electricity bill and do a magical incantation on the bill saying, "I do not accept or forward this," and you got to write it. I have to write it with red ink on a 45-degree angle. I shit you not, they do actually say that you have to do it exactly in this manner, or else the magic, it's not going to work. Just send it back to them, and then, you know, some secret the Treasury's going to end up putting the bill for you. Or you know, you know, we found the secret sauce to your alleged legal fiction straw man, that, you know, you have a secret account where your account number is your social security number, and if you if you send this letter out to the Treasury saying that I want to withdraw from my account, you know, of $500,000, and then suddenly you found yourself a whole bunch of cash. All you got to do is buy my $400 packet and just fill it out, and then if they don't do it, then you sue their ass, because, you know, they're doing it wrong. You know, don't blame it on me. No refunds. But it's not my fault. It's their fault that they're not giving you their money. You know, and that's one of several different scams that I've seen them peddle. And it goes beyond just the mere, you know, buy my court documents and I'll be able to get your kids back type of thing.
Yeah, that was an aspect I just was not aware of. So listen, and all you sovereign citizens watching, you got two attorneys here. Let me tell you, or if you're not a sovereign, but you're thinking about buying this stuff, your money is better. Go to LegalZoom. You don't have to.
I know.
You don't have to hire an attorney. Go to LegalZoom. Go to the law library. Do it on your own. Don't buy this crap. They could be prosecuted possibly for the illegal practice of law. I would
Many of
think.
them have, and many of them have. More than one occasion. There is, what the hell is he called? I forget his name, but he operates the, what is it called? Baines Law and forensic science team. He adds in forensic science team because reasons. And then also Anthony Troy Williams, the private attorney general, who I believe is currently in prison right now, but still filing his paperwork.
He made himself attorney general.
Yeah,
I'm
so
the
he found a federal statute that talks about private attorney generals where it's used in a very, very specific context. Ronnie Lee Davis, that's the name of the guy, the guy with the Baines Law. But he found this federal statute. He's like, oh, I'll just become my own goddamn attorney general, complete with a badge and handcuffs that he was arrested with. And he was I think he got 22 years of probation, where he was forbidden from calling himself a private attorney general because he was filing for documents for foreclosure. And he actually, there's a video of him trying to present himself in the middle of court during a foreclosure hearing, and the judge like kicked him out of the house, kicked him out of the courtroom, like, you're not an attorney, get the hell out of here. Yeah. And he's also awaiting. That's right. Dimmer also pointed out in the chat that he's also awaiting federal trial right now as well. But then that's right. Ronnie Lee Davis is the other guy who is like Baines Law and forensic science in Florida. And look, man, I don't often try to do ad homs, but the dude wears like really long, like freaking hair. He kind of looks like a creeper, and that kind of matches what he was eventually arrested for, was for false imprisonment, where some woman who bought into this thing went to his compound, yes, it's a compound in Florida, and he refused to allow her to leave. So it was for false imprisonment or kidnapping that he was ended up arrested for, and is in a jail time. But I think while he was there, they also charged him with the unlawful practice of law, because again, this guy was going to the courtroom, filing paperwork. And he's not the only one. I mean, those are the two big ones that I know of who are infamous on YouTube for getting in trouble for the unlawful practice of law, because these guys are they're not just giving advice on YouTube, they're actually filing paperwork on these people's behalf. Yeah, it's crazy. I wasn't even aware of that, so it's kind of blowing me away that the scam part of this. You mentioned too what we had discussed, that they have a certain opinion or theory about lawyers, right? Lawyers are part of a secret cabal or something. I don't know. Yes. So, okay. Get ready for this. If you've never heard any of this at all, I just want to know: have you heard any of their ideas at all on this?
No, I haven't.
Okay, so the first thing is they think the bar in Bar Association is an acronym.
Okay.
Can you guess any idea what the acronym would be?
Bar. Let's see.
They think that BAR is BAR. It's an acronym for something.
Bad attorneys reek. I don't know.
British Accredited Registry.
Okay. All right. Interesting.
So I've heard multiple different formulations of the theory, but one that I recall is that the moment that you and I became attorneys, we lost our U.S. citizenship, and we are actually members and servants of the Crown of England.
Really?
Largely because Esquire, our usage of Esquire, is considered a title of nobility, and according to the original 13th Amendment, anybody who has a title of nobility are immediately stripped of their citizenship in the United States.
Okay. Are we citizens of Great Britain then? I mean,
I have asked them that for clarification. I haven't really gotten a straight answer on that yet.
Are we part of the royal family? I mean, I want some perks. That's all.
I'm like, where's my land in Yorkshire? Okay, but
right.
I apparently missed this bit in law school where they warned me, like, make sure I just want to let you guys know as one else, if you want to be attorneys, know that you're going to lose your citizenship the moment you get your moment you're sworn in.
Wait, don't you remember that after we passed the bar when they took us into that back room through the and the Queen was there?
Yes. Apparently, we swore our oath to the Queen and not to the Constitution when we swore our oath of office. And also, on top of that, they often do the whole thing about licensure. Oftentimes, they'll say, "Oh, that's right. Our practice as attorneys, we are actually not. Our licenses are not governed by our respective states. They are actually governed by the private organization called the Bar Association."
Okay, and I guess
in other words, you can only be an attorney through your membership of this private organization. Therefore, it's illegitimate because of it being a private institution. Even though I've told these guys on more than one occasion that I am not a member of the American Bar Association, the New Jersey Bar Association, or the New York Bar Association. Those are entirely voluntary organizations. And I tell them my license is governed by the state of New Jersey or the state of New York, the judiciary. Most of them don't buy that bullshit.
Right.
And well, Dimmer points out the case where they claim they're right. Is called Schwer versus New Mexico Board of Bar Examiners.
I gotta read that case.
The long and short of it is that the court, it's a Supreme Court case where the court basically said that the Bar Association of New Mexico cannot forbid this guy from getting a license for bad character solely by virtue of his membership with the Communist Party.
Okay.
The problem is that they and this is a practice that they cherry pick one line.
Right.
A half sentence where the court says the practice of law cannot be licensed by this state or any other state.
Right.
And they end it right there. Even though the rest of the sentence talks about through arbitrary means. They says that the state can control the licensure via merit, aka passing the bar exam, and also moral character and fitness. But virtue of the membership of the Communist Party cannot, in and of itself, be an aspect of poor moral character. That's what the court said. But part and parcel to the sovereign citizens is they love to cherry pick and selectively quote court cases here and there, and that is just one perfect example of that.
And the truth of them, I mean, if you read enough court cases, you could put together, a little crossword puzzle. It will say whatever you want. If you cherry pick enough court cases, you can put together and you can say whatever you want. But let's be fair, actual attorneys do this stuff too.
They do that, but the problem is they get called out on it too, just as much as other people do. I mean, I've seen courts call out attorneys that the opposing counsel cites X, Y, and Z. However, it's an opposite because that case actually said this, ABC. So
and let's give a little legal knowledge too. Is that language in a case can be considered dicta, and so it's not necessarily it doesn't necessarily carry the authority. It's just basically the logical reasoning of the court, and what ultimately matters in a case, right, is the holding itself.
Yes.
So what was the actual decision? What was the actual holding? In a strange way, you can sort of break a case down to one sentence, right? That's what we do in law school. This is the law. Now, sometimes you pull multiple laws out of a case, but at the end of the day, sometimes 95% of the language in a case, you need to read it to understand, but it's not law just because a court wrote it in a case.
Right. I agree. But I think one of the biggest and most common aspects of what, and I call it quote chaining, because a lot of times that's what they do. They chain together these to kind of direct down to the path of where they want to go. And the biggest example I've seen that is the right to travel thing, and where they'll start with one Supreme Court case where the right to travel is a fundamental right, that is so apparent that we need not have to express it. Then they get the next court case that fundamental rights cannot be abridged. They cannot be turned into a privilege. Whatsoever. Then they go to another case. Any law that abuses a fundamental right can be ignored, and without any consequence whatsoever. And therefore, that means I have the right to drive without a license. So,
Right,
you see,
right.
but you see the path that they take from one case to another without looking at the actual context of each case and what they're talking about,
Right.
and they
Right.
try to connect them to get to their ultimate goal, which is I don't have to have a license to drive a car.
It's almost just a big language game that they're playing. It's just they play this really crazy language game to try to get to the conclusion that they want while ignoring the parts that they don't want.
No, yes.
And that was interesting. You told me about, it has to be written on the angle. I was reading a little bit about how things are written in all caps. That means the corporation wrote it in cap. And,
oh my God.
And everybody born in the country is like a little corporate entity created by them, by the government.
Yes.
And the language, when it's all caps, it's the actual corporation. I don't even know.
Yes, that is a court. The courts have called it, and that's part of that sort of treasury account, Social Security account scam.
Okay.
The government has created a straw man that's identified as your all capital letters type name, and that's where your account is held, and then you can access this account with all this money in there by waving a magic wand and over a spell and doing the right language, and then you can access it. I honestly don't know the full origins of where the whole idea that we're in all caps framing of somebody's name automatically has legal significance, and where it's acknowledging somebody's freaking legal fiction, where it's a separate entity from your individual person, your individual identity.
Right.
However, oh God, and it goes into something else that somebody also mentioned: the obsession with using legal dictionaries as though they're law. I don't know about you, but very rarely have I cited Black's Law Dictionary in many of my cases in my memorandums. I've seen it only very rarely cited in court cases, and even then, in many instances, I've seen courts tend to use Merriam-Webster when identifying a term that may or may not be ambiguous.
Yes.
Rather than Black's Law Dictionary, but they often use, most of the time outdated. They often use the second edition from 1910, and they cite to it and also treat it as if it's enforceable law, like every state is bound by whatever Black's Law Dictionary defines a term. But part of where they come out this is I think one of the things that they often cite is what the hell was it called? Capitis diminutio, which is an old term. Again, I didn't know this until I started looking this up. It's an old phrase from Roman law, from ancient Rome. Don't ask me why it's in Black's Law Dictionary, but they often have a lot of archaic French legal terms and a lot of English. But capitis diminutio was an old reference to where in Roman law, Roman culture, an individual can lose their status as an individual.
Person.
They can lose they can become second class citizens, like literal second class citizens or third class citizens. And they'll say, and what one of the terms in there is capitis diminutio maxima, which means somebody who has lost. Basically, they are only one step above a slave in Roman culture. And so I don't know if it's. Let me gather my thoughts, because this is so fucking stupid. I don't know whether it's because capitis sounds similar to capital, that is where they cite when it comes to saying all capital letters means a fiction.
What?
All capital letters of somebody's name means that they're a legal fiction, is that they cite this capitis diminutio maxima, and I don't see the connection except for the idea that capitis sounds similar to capital as in capital letters. That is it. I have no other idea why they would make that connection with the two. It's nuts. It's fucking nuts. Again,
it's a hell of a leap of logic. Let's say that. That is
humongous to say that they were referring to the postal. Yeah, there is another. Oh god. I just forgot about something, and I may have to retract my statement in terms of citing the Moors as the most insane group. It may be actually this one guy, called David Windmiller. Okay. Okay. This guy, who also claims to be the king of Hawaii, among other things, on December 21st, 2012, which happened to be the end times date for the Mayan calendar, reopened the what's called the Federal Postal Court, which he claims Benjamin Franklin created, but then was disbanded in 1776. I don't even know if that's fucking true, but suffice to say he recreated it. But part and parcel to that, he created his own court, and he also considered him the Supreme Court justice of this court.
Must be nice.
But he created a new form of the English grammar.
You gotta be kidding me.
I can't even describe it without fucking it up, because it's so batshit.
He got his own language. He got his own language.
It's all capital letters, and it's the idea is that the any usage of adverbs or ending sentences with certain participles would eventually nullify contracts, or it's called parse syntax grammar. You know what? I think it's better if I fucking show it to you, because it's hard to describe this insanity.
It's hurting my head.
I told people that, if I was going to start doing some of these breakdowns and these courtroom breakdowns,
yeah,
I could never do David Windmiller, because there's just so much insanity that I don't think you could only go 3 minutes of one of his videos would end up being a 30-minute video for me as a breakdown.
I gotcha.
It's just that level of insanity.
It's too much. That's hilarious. It's again, there's like that element of magic. There's like this element, like magical words, magical documents.
Yes.
Secret passwords. I'm actually surprised there's not more of. I mean, I want to compare it to like the Freemasons. I'm almost surprised there's not a little bit more of like that magical aspect to a lot of the theories. It seems like the Moors maybe have more stuff going on. One thing I wanted to say with the Moors is, their argument is interesting. That's actually their argument is actually the argument that the Native Americans maybe rightfully have. Okay. Yeah. Native Americans were here. We could talk about like slavery too. So the place that they come from, I actually kind of get, but more so with Native Americans. And I remember a case in law school. I could be totally butchering this case, but it's my understanding that the Native Americans went into the American courts shortly after the Revolution, and we're making arguments like this, like the fact, like arguing that the United States government doesn't have authority and jurisdiction over them. They were here first, et cetera, et cetera. And I think Chief Justice Marshall was basically like, look, I'm an official of the United States government. I have to recognize it. And that's it. End of story, which isn't satisfying in any way, logical or not. But it feels to me like the sovereign citizens make similar arguments to that.
Yes.
But the whole language thing, I mean, they got their own language, I guess.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm sharing my screen right now. I don't know if you can see it on there.
Yeah, I can. Yeah.
So this Leighton Ward is, I think he's like the the co-founder of this federal postal court. I think he was their so-called treasurer or secretary. And he got in trouble because he tried to apparently his mother's house got foreclosed on. A couple in Arizona bought the house, and he then proceeded to harass this couple with filing liens and paperwork and the usual sovereign citizen spiel.
Right.
What this is a audio recording that he made between him and the attorney for the family in that case.
I saw that.
You seen it? So
I didn't watch the whole video. I watched a couple minutes of it.
David Funkhauser?
Yes, David, this is Leighton. How are you?
I'm doing well, Leighton. How are you?
Good. I want to wait a couple minutes, see if we can get anybody else on the line.
There's nobody else on the line.
Absolutely.
Yeah, right.
Before we get started, are you or the court being represented at this time?
I don't understand your question.
Are you being represented by a lawyer, a real lawyer?
A real
Nope.
lawyer.
Okay.
I can't hear the audio. Can you hear it?
Oh, damn it. Oh, that's right. It's because of how Google operates. That's my bad. I forgot. That's right. I forgot. My audience can hear it, but you can't hear it. But
yeah, I can't hear it.
Leighton Ward is an acolyte of this sort of quantum syntax grammar language. And the thing is, like I said, if you have access to Lexis, I highly recommend you look him up, because sometimes they'll have the actual documents that they file, and you'll see the craziness that goes into these things. Because again, it's fucking nuts. And Miller himself is also fucking nuts. I'm pretty sure though he's passed on. I think he died in 2017 or something like that. Notwithstanding, but
interesting.
Yeah. So if you ever, and that's the thing. One of the paperwork that I got, like a lot of the times he uses the colon, name, dash, grammatical way in terms of how they write their names. Again, this is all part of the magic incantation, the magic language. I saw that in some of the filings that I've gotten and I've seen. So that's another tell that you've seen, that you could tell when somebody's kind of buying into this ideology. But he's the originator of that crap.
Right.
So
right.
Yeah.
It's either a cult. It's either a cult or very cult-like. And it sounds to me like even certain enclaves have formed into cults. I mean, you told me about this guy who has a compound.
Yes.
Like, to me, that's like a marker of a cult, is if you have a compound or there's a compound involved.
A lot of them, yeah, I think a lot of them really dig. Oftentimes, even when they're shot down in court, they just kind of double down.
Right.
into the ideology, and they just kind of dip further and further.
And their ideology reinforces, well, oh, so I lost in court. Well, I only lost in court because the system is rigged against us. It's not blah, blah, blah. You know, they have an answer to everything, right? And that's probably how they suck people in, and how it lives on. I mean, they got an answer for everything, just like a lot of cult ideologies out there.
Yeah, exactly.
The sad thing to me is that I'm sort of a small government type person. I'm not a big fan of an overarching federal government, and I support small government in a lot of situations, not all of them, libertarianism, et cetera, and these guys kind of give, I think they detract from real, legitimate small government type political movements,
right,
or not. And so it's kind of sad in that sense, because again, I sympathize with some of them. And like we talked at the beginning, I may agree, this individual who was being prosecuted for holding a small amount of marijuana, like, I agree that that's BS. Like, I think marijuana should be legalized in all 50 states. And that's my opinion. It's just, it's not. I believe that it should be. Work to change the laws, work to do things. Don't just flaunt, in the face of the law, period.
Right. And again, in many aspects, and I agree with you that they do kind of do a disservice to what they ultimately believe. And they ultimately hurt, their own ideas and their own causes that they want to advocate. But because oftentimes, there's I mean, nothing else garners more sympathy for law enforcement than seeing some guy acting like a jackass in the middle of a traffic stop and giving the officer a freaking hard time for no other reason other than to think that you're an attorney and trying to legislate your case, and being an aggressive individual, like you're nothing but a public servant, basically being a disrespectful asshole. And then
Right.
Everybody's gonna be rooting for the cop to just smash the window in and slam you to the ground, because everybody would start to get pissed off and annoyed by your self-serving attitude when you're acting like that, and acting like the laws don't apply to you, when here I am, I gotta end up getting a ticket, and I'm the one who's I gotta deal with this shit, whereas this asshole wants to just play games and give everybody a hard time.
Great point. Great point. I think that's why a lot of this is so popular online. I mean, a lot of the videos that are out there of sovereign citizens, it's so popular. I think you touched on it right there. It's like you got this guy, coming out saying the laws don't apply to me, when 98.9% of the population is out there paying their taxes, working hard, and trying to follow the rules. I mean, and you're going to get out here and say, oh, they didn't sign a contract with me when I was, I don't know, 18 years old. I mean, it's BS.
Right. No, I agree.
Crazy. I can't see you on the screen. Do you still have me up?
Oh, I think I still am sharing. Hang on. There we go.
It doesn't matter. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about? Do you want to go a little bit longer, a couple more topics, or we close this up?
I think we could close it up. We've gone in for about an hour and a half, so we could definitely continue the conversation later at another time. So and yeah, we could discuss more of the other gurus or more infamous gurus who have actually gotten their days in court. Specifically Winston Shrout, who is again another guy who peddled a tax avoidance scam, trying to file like 1099 OIDs. And then we have Heather and Tucci Giraffe, that's her name, who is also part of a okay, I didn't know these kinds existed, but apparently they exist. There are actually hippie, like new ager hippie sovereign citizens. I didn't know that was a thing, but they're all about like the really weird hippie, like Earth Mother, like believing in your, you know, your chi, and you're believing in yourself, yet they still operate under the bullshit illegal strategies that's just as insane as anybody else. She basically encouraged this guy to do the whole treasury direct account thing, and apparently it worked very briefly. And so he ended up getting a deposit from USAA for about $500,000. That the thing is, he immediately transferred it to a different account, so it wouldn't be, so, you know, as soon as USAA figured out what the fuck did we just do and tried to renege on it, and he ended up buying a freaking RV, or tried to buy an like a very high-end RV with it, got caught, and now they've been charged and sentenced as well. And then you'll get into people who, they're not necessarily, I wouldn't say that sovereign citizen ideology is necessarily their specific thing, but they're just complete conspiracy nutters in general.
Right.
We're talking people who, you know, 9/11, flat Earth, you know, and everything in between, along with the whole sovereign citizen 1933 bankruptcy, straw man, etc. thing. So, yeah. But yeah, the whole New Ager hippie sovereign citizen thing was like a weird one for me, because I didn't know that. I didn't know that was a thing. But anyway,
pick your flavor. Pick your flavor,
yes,
right? You're
that's
hippie.
one thing. It expands the spectrum.
Right. You're a hippie. Here you go. You're a right winger. Here you go. You know, you're black. We got a group for you. Whatever you want to be. Any type of
basically.
Come on.
Yeah. So yeah, hey, it was a great talking to you. It was a great discussion we have. I'm sure we could definitely do this again. But everybody go check out his channel. I'll go ahead and let you go ahead and make your plug, so you can take care of that.
Same thing. Well, check out my channel, Joe Pometto Law Show. I'm gonna post this video on my channel as well. So to my viewers, check out our Trexis Lives. I'm gonna put a link below. He's been on this sovereign citizen stuff a lot longer than I have. I'm kind of new to it. So as you can tell from this video, just a fountain of knowledge, a lot of good content. Check him out. And everybody, thanks for tuning in and watching my show. Check out my channel. You like my stuff, visit, subscribe to both of us.
All right. Yeah. Sounds good, man. Likewise, everybody check him out. And guys, feel free to like, subscribe the channel. I'm gonna have more content later on this week, and we'll let you know ahead of time when Joe and I will be talking again. And we'll definitely try to bring a couple more people in if we can, and kind of get a more conversation going if you have questions for us and so on. So, all right, guys, you guys have a good night, and I'll see you next time. Take care.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for having me. All right.
Thanks, guys. Again for coming on. It was a great discussion I had with Joe. Especially another attorney that we can both talk shop, and especially as an attorney who has seen the courtroom antics firsthand. I personally haven't. I've only seen it through filings that I've gotten from them. So again, guys, I will try to have more stuff coming up this week. More breakdowns, and yeah, thanks again for dropping by, much appreciated, and we'll go next time. Yes, Justin, I agree. I think he it would be a fun experience if he and I did bingo over some videos. So I'll have to think about that for next time. Take care, guys. Have a good night. Adios.